I just got off the phone talking to a good friend of mine. His name is Todd. We've been talking consistently for over a year now. When I lived in the same city as him, we would get coffee and just pray together and talk about life and to check on one another's well being. And that's been one of the most important relationships in my life. I feel healthy and I feel good right now, but I've had some challenging days over the last few weeks. So as I deal with challenges and as I think about challenges and I think about other people that may be dealing with challenges, it can be really easy to forget that God is at work in the midst of those challenges and those struggles. So as I'm dealing with difficult moments, as I'm dealing with challenging things, I need many reminders in my life that God is still at work. This is how I still can trust in God in the midst of difficult moments. I need to have community that remind me of truth despite maybe some of the lies that are in my head while I'm going through difficult moments. Because as I'm in difficult moments, I'm thinking God is not here and God is not present. I'm thinking this is going to last forever and there's no hope. There's no way out of this. I'm thinking God doesn't love me because I'm going through these hard times. These are some of the thoughts I tend to have when I'm going through difficult and challenging moments. But reminders like community, reminders like taking time to take care of myself in the midst of the challenges, reminders like I think the scriptures are helpful reminders. Sometimes for me, books are helpful reminders. For me, getting time alone every day to just be, and sometimes I pray, sometimes I just sit in silence. That's helpful for me to be reminded that God is still present, God is still moving, God is still working despite the difficulties. Going outside in nature is a good reminder for me too. What I need is to develop a rule of life and stay committed to that rule of life. So as life tackles me like it will, I'll be more prepared to deal with the challenges. It's not that I'm just invincible as I deal with the challenges with the rule of life or with disciplines and spiritual tools, but it's just like I'm better prepared. I'm not totally defeated. I'm not totally without a foundation to live my life on or to build on in the midst of difficult moments. So what a rule of life is basically just a rhythm or a set of disciplines that you want to incorporate in your life or practices that you want to incorporate in your life so that you're reminded of God's presence, so that you're reminded of the Spirit's presence. So a discipline that I'm sure you're probably familiar with is going to church. That could be part of your rule of life, or being involved in some type of community in a healthy way. Something else that's on my rule of life is just making sure that I'm getting outside. There's something about being at a park. There's something about getting some sunshine on my skin that really just grounds me and centers me. There's also something about talking to people one on one about what God is doing, like my friend Todd. That is really helpful for me. And sometimes there's some resistance. I'm like, do I really have time in my schedule to talk? But I'm always grateful after the conversation ends. So there's always some resistance. I get in my head sometimes about how I want things to go in my life, but I need these things. I know I do. I need things like essential oils to remind me of God's presence. I need incense. I need tea. I need all of these reminders that I'm not alone, that God is with me even in these difficult moments, even in the challenging moments, even in the stressful moments. God is still present. So these are some of my thoughts when I think about this question of how do I trust God in difficult moments? I do that by doing all I can to order my life in a way that reminds me constantly of God's presence. And this is a challenge. It's an ongoing thing because your needs change, your environment changes, relationships change. So there's so many factors that you have to keep in mind as you're thinking about disciplines and spiritual practices, because what works for me is not going to work for you. And we are just very unique creatures that need to be reminded of God's presence and God's reality in unique ways. And it's okay to subscribe to that way of thinking, and it's okay to try to personalize your approach to the divine. I hope things get better for you. I hope that you are reminded of the beauty in spite of the difficulty. I hope that you're reminded of the lovely in spite of the ugly. I hope that you're reminded of the joy in spite of the pain. And I hope that you're reminded that in order for light to exist, in order for good to exist, there has to be darkness. There has to be not so good. This is the world that we're living in, and there's not much I can do about it. There's not much that you can do about it, but there are things that we can do in our own lives to prepare ourselves for the reality of living. And this is what we do as we embrace spiritual practices, as we embrace spiritual rhythms, as we embrace having a rule of life. These are some of the things that we do to prepare ourselves for life. Thank you so much for watching. I pray blessings over your day, and I pray blessings over this season of your life.
I was afraid, so I ran from my life. I was alone and I was ready to die. I fell asleep, and when I opened my eyes, I saw everything that I needed to move on and survive. So I got up, ate, and I continued to move. I spent 40 days alone and I was looking for you. I traveled to the mountain like my father did, but you were nowhere in sight.